Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse podcast here at Manifest 2026, and I am now in the Cycle Labs booth, and I'm joined by Josh Owen here. And Josh has been on the podcast before, where we're going to catch up with him a little bit, talk about Cycle Labs, and we're going to talk about what they do, testing, but we're also going to talk about the evolutions of systems within the warehouse, which has been very interesting, and Josh is going to give us some insight on that. But first, Josh, how you doing?
Kevin, good to see you again, man. Appreciate
You too.
it. Glad to be back.
Yeah, definitely. So tell us a little bit about Cycle Labs in the first place for people that aren't familiar.
Yeah, so Cycle Labs, we build enterprise test automation. Basically, the idea is we help our clients, our customers, introduce change into these complex enterprise systems faster than they have in the past, so reducing time to value while increasing quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Increasing quality, we like that for sure, right? So let's talk a little bit about this, because getting ready for this, right, I was doing some research, found this really cool graphic from your website talking about kind of the evolution of systems within the warehouse and how, that's just become kind of layered on and stacked upon and, posted this great graphic that you guys had made on LinkedIn and people loved it. They had a lot to say, right? So tell us from your perspective, kind of what the evolution of the systems in the warehouse looks like and where are we today?
Yeah, so I think it was really good comments, lots of good conversation in the picture.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I started my career in supply chain in the mid-2000s, right? So this was like probably towards the tail end of, I would say, a decade or so when WMS started becoming the default, right? Like prior to that, like in the 90s, right? That was really when warehouses were still very much manual.
Yeah.
And it was fine, right? Logistics were a little bit simpler back then. You really could do a lot of it manually. But then say 95 to 2005, in that period of time, there was an explosion, what I would call like logistics complexity, right? So like SKU counts went up. There's not like one type of Oreos, there's like 50 types of Oreos, right?
Yeah.
So there's more than there used to be. There's like lots of options. And so like Joe or Sally or whoever's out on the floor, it was really hard for them to be able to do this manually anymore. And so around the same time, you've got like early e-commerce, omni-channel ordering, like the mandate of RFID tags from big retailers and things like that. And a lot of that stuff you can't do as a human, right? So we needed a system to help make that easier for facilities. WMS was sort of the first option to do that, and it became the default. And now we look at that now, and it's like, we would never run like an enterprise level distribution center without a warehouse management system, right? And an interesting in the comments is like, there's a lot of companies that could do that. You go back and do paper or whatever.
Sure.
You definitely could.
Yeah.
But like, it's not like a viable strategy to keep up with the pace at which business moves today.
Absolutely.
Right? So WMS was really like the first option. And then you could like decide, was it really OMS or TMS first? But it doesn't matter for the point of it, which was we have now decided you can run these systems more efficiently. You can solve these problems with these software solutions. So you've got like the warehouse control systems when it was just conveyors.
Yeah.
Right? And you got like, we can do it with warehouse management. We can now do it with transportation management. You start to layer in all the other MSs, right? The order management systems, the labor management systems. Now you got warehouse execution systems. And effectively this is my take on it, but what I think happened is on top of logistics complexity, we have now created a systems complexity problem.
Sure, yeah.
Okay? And so what I watched happen, so I've been in this space now for a little over 20 years, right, focused on deploying these systems, is what that created then was a challenge to introduce change because now you have all these systems that must be validated, that must be tested when you're changing any one of them. And so sort of the natural human inclination is when you don't know what to do because you don't know how to validate whether or not you're going to cause a problem, you do nothing, right? And so what happened in this space is we developed a modus operandi, sort of an MO of avoiding change unless we had to change. So something's being sunset, the OEM is forcing you to, or whatever the case may be. And so after a couple of decades, I think that we've developed a muscle of, trying to run away from change, to view change as a bad thing.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, like when I would do these system upgrades for customers, we would move from a 4 or 5 year old system to a newer version of it. And ultimately what we were doing is trying to re-implement the old processes.
Yeah.
It's a technical upgrade, but you're not really taking advantage of any of the true offerings in that upgraded system. You're just trying to recreate the old thing because now what we've gotten used to is just like, this is the way that we've always done it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So I think that's been something that's taken a couple of decades to develop, but it's a muscle that needs to be retrained in our space.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And I think, we've kind of gone like just like acronym crazy, right? On the
Yeah.
system side. I mean, supply chain in general. Right? We
Yeah.
love our acronyms for whatever reason, right?
Right.
And we just keep growing them and evolving them. But, great point there. I mean, as like, we started to solve problems that were arising, right? As businesses changed, right? Well, we create a system to be able to fit on just that problem set, right? And be able to do that. But then as you stated, right, over time, well, we've developed this system complexity in that sense, right? So how do we kind of bring that all together? How do we make sure they're working together well? And how do we know when we implement these things that they're gonna be okay, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like where you come in, right?
Yeah.
You're on the testing side. So tell us a little bit about, kind of how you're addressing that through Cycle Labs, and why is that so needed the more complex the systems get?
Yeah. So I think it's a psychological problem, which is if you go back to the systems complexity issue and the change avoidance mentality, if you aren't changing all the time, then there's really not a need to invest in testing, right? Testing really only exists because you're changing something.
Yeah.
And so after, whatever it is, 10, 20 years of avoiding that, organizations have really started to learn to undervalue that as a capability. We're not changing very often. There's no need to invest in that. There's no need to have a full-time team. And so you end up with is the strategy of pulling folks off the floor. Right? Go grab the subject matter experts, shove them into a computer lab or whatever the room is for a little while, have them bang on it and say, well, does this seem to get the job done?
Yeah. Can I break it or not?
Yeah, right. And so that is a failed strategy for a variety of reasons, right? First of all, it's a point-in-time solution, meaning it is not scalable in any way, right? It does a great job of testing today's change one time, but it does not do a great job of regressively testing other things.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make sure that the change I'm making today does what it's supposed to do. But unless you have an army and no one's doing this, there's no real way to make sure that you're also always testing all the other processes, the up and downstream systems. Have I changed this thing, but then inadvertently broken something else, right?
Yeah.
Software companies have solved this problems decades ago. But we haven't done it in the supply chain space.
Yeah.
Right. So what we're trying to do at Cycle Labs is help companies reframe how they look at testing. It's not a point in time thing, but it should be a capability that you invest in.
Right.
Because if there's anything that we've learned as an industry over the past 5 years is if you can count on something, it's change.
Yeah.
So you got to learn how to deal with it. Right?
It's constant. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that's such a great way to look at it, right? Because it is kind of like, okay, well, we're gonna look at this system, and let's just pull in somebody that's gonna use it, and does it look okay? And they're thinking about a million other things, so they're like, this looks fine, and then a couple weeks down the road, they're like, oh, well, this doesn't work the right way, or this doesn't do this, right? Yeah. So how do you solve for that?
Yeah. Well, I think to build on that point, it's like, and again, I started my career at Red Prairie, which obviously eventually became Blue Yonder. So I spent my entire career deploying these systems. Yeah. And even when I was in my early days of my career, we looked at the go live as the finish line, right? But it's really day one, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, we are now running on the system, but the world didn't stop in that 3-6 month period of time that we were preparing to flip the switch.
Yeah.
So on day two, there's all kinds of other business processes that we need to start implementing. There was vendor onboarding needs to happen. There's process improvement. There's requirements that we missed along the way.
Yeah.
So that point in time testing is just absolutely not the solution to keep you up to date, to be able to innovate and to embrace change regularly, which is what we need in today's world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about that a little bit, because now, in the kind of cloud environment we live in, everybody's kind of pushing updates all the time, right? And that's becoming, for some of these systems companies, that's a selling point, right? It's like, oh, every month we're pushing out an update, or every quarter we're pushing out a new update, right? But oftentimes, from an operations perspective, it can be hard to keep up with all those updates and make sure that they're going to work properly. So how does Cycle Labs kind of help navigate that, and how would you, advise people to approach kind of that constant update mentality?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the OEMs kind of view that as a selling point, right? But I think, to your point, a lot of the customers almost view it as a detriment, which is we've had the luxury of being able to avoid changing and upgrading for years at a time, and now we have to figure out how to consume this. Yeah. And so it's ultimately a change management, conversation, which is how do you help your users embrace change, to view it as a positive thing. And when it in the world of testing, a lot of times what we'll do is use user acceptance testing. This is the wrong thing to do, to be clear. Use user acceptance testing as your basically your system testing, right? I'm gonna pull these subject matter experts off the floor. I'm gonna say, go and test the process. Does it do what it's supposed to do? And along the way, they're finding all these system issues. Yeah. Right. And so what that actually does is create a trust problem, between your IT teams or the teams that are trying to like upgrade these systems and the operations team who are using these systems all day to do their job. And that's the absolute last thing you want when it comes to change management. You want to create trust here, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea. And so from a test automation perspective, a customer will ask us a lot, like, oh, is this a replacement for UAT? And it's like, the answer is absolutely not.
Okay.
UAT should be a trust building exercise for your operations team. It should be them putting their hands on the system, validating that it solves the business need, getting them comfortable with the system. And when they are finding all these system bugs along the way, it creates a massive trust problem, right? So investing in automation and high quality testing as a capability, as a part of infrastructure, builds trust in that operations team. It helps them get used to adopting change and viewing it as a positive thing, right? It helps them move the business forward to improve their lives. And a lot of times today they view it as this awful thing, right? If I can't even trust sitting in that lab and doing it one time, how am I going to do my job every day?
Yeah.
Right. So I think doing it actually builds trust, reframes user acceptance testing as what it's supposed to be, and creates sort of a conduit for adoption with the ops teams and the teams that are going to be using these systems.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great advice there. And I think it's a great way to approach it too as well, because I think, we are seeing these constant updates, right? And why it could be a good thing, right? Because we're getting new features and things like that. But it is also like, in some cases, maybe a stressful thing for operations.
Definitely is.
To be like, okay, well, do I need to do this update? Do I not need to do this update? And if I do I have to change my process? And what does that look like, right? So being able to do that kind of ongoing testing, I think, makes a lot of sense. So now from a customer perspective, right? I'm curious to like, who is your ideal customer? I mean, is it operations of all size, or should they have like a certain amount of systems, or one system qualifies them? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for us, it's a relatively straightforward math problem, which is like, if you are using a tier 2 or a tier 1 WMS, TMS, OMS to run your business, you're probably a good candidate for adopting test automation at scale, because you're already investing, you're making major investments to run your facility with these types of systems. And if you're at that level, then the math problem of investing in test automation, the ROI is almost always going to be there.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I can say that is, like, it's not even always about those upgrades, right?
Yeah.
If you are changing your travel paths, if you're updating how allocation works, if you're onboarding a new vendor, these are all system changes that warrant testing in an end-to-end way, whether or not you are going to adversely affect your system.
Yeah.
It's just we've not done it for so long that it's not how we think about introducing change.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, it's so interesting to see, like, because as we think about the evolution, like we talked about in the beginning, right, we also need to kind of evolve the things that we do around what's evolving within the technology space too, which, as you said, is like something we haven't been used to, right? So it's effectively a change in mindset and how we look at that.
Yeah.
And now, so, this automated testing, as you kind of distinguish there, is different than that UAT testing, right?
Yeah.
So the automated testing, I mean, that's going to be continuous, right?
100%.
Yeah.
So when you invest in test automation, and I'll use this metaphor a lot in the supply chain space because I think it resonates.
Yeah.
It's like you would never invest in a robotics implementation or conveyance or something like that if you're only going to do it one time, right? If you're moving boxes from one side of the warehouse to the other, and you're going to do it once, the ROI would never be there to invest in automation or robotics. Test automation is no different, right?
Yeah.
If you're looking at testing one time, it probably doesn't make sense to do it in an automated fashion.
Right.
If you're looking at adopting change regularly, and God willing you are, because like that's who's going to win these days, right?
Absolutely,
Companies who know how to innovate, who know how to adjust and change. If you are that type of company, the ROI is going to be simple, right? It is going to make a ton of sense to do it. And what you'll find is very quickly there's a freedom in it, right?
Right.
It's like now you have the ability to measure change, to account for it, and what I usually say is make the changes you want to make when you want to make them, as opposed to sort of being held captive to fear of that uncertainty.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really interesting to hear and really interesting to talk to you here, Josh. And I think that, very interesting what you're doing, right? I think, very different from anything else I'm seeing here, but obviously very complementary to a lot of things that are going on here from a systems perspective as well. So if you look at kind of the landscape of technology overall, right? Because we're at Manifest, it's all about the future of supply chain and logistics is what they say, right? So what do you look at from maybe a systems perspective or just overall technology perspectives as kind of like what the future of the warehouse looks like?
So I hope, like this is a prediction, I guess, but like I hope that as an industry, and I think this is the thing that I'm most excited about here, is it's not like one particular vendor or one particular piece of robotics or whatever it is, but there is an air of excitement. You know, there's a lot of conversation about artificial intelligence and all this stuff, but for me, having been in this space for 2 decades, there is an excitement around change and technology like I haven't seen, right? There's a lot of buzzword things that we see in this space that never really get fruition. And I think no one here is a fortune teller. We don't know exactly what the future is going to look like. For the first time in a long time, I see excitement about change and about moving the industry forward. I mean, when I started my career, 20 plus years ago, I couldn't tell you what supply chain was. Right? I didn't know. I mean, I don't know how these boxes get here. Shows up on my door. But it has become such a consumer-facing thing. Right? When I order something online, I know when the tracking label was produced. I know when it was picked up. I know when it was at the carrier. I know when it's going to make it to my house. It is a consumer-facing industry, and I think with innovation and technology adoption, you're going to adopt, or rather attract, younger generations who are interested in investing and building technology to make it better. And so what I hope that we see is continue innovation and excitement and change in this space. And I don't know if it's going to be pure AI or lots of robotics or some combination thereof, or to the comment on LinkedIn. Like, are we going to see consolidation or is it going to be continued disparity? I don't know. And it kind of doesn't matter to me. I just want to see change and innovation and being embraced in our space, and that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel that same excitement. Obviously, I get a little more excited than others, maybe you could say. I have a podcast all about it, but that excitement certainly is kind of buzzing here too. And I think even it was interesting. Like, we were having a conversation this morning, right? It's just we were looking at the attendees, and over the years, like just the attendees of conferences too. Like, you see more like youth too, right?
100%.
Which more people are getting involved because I think the technology aspect, right, that's getting them interested, as you said, and they're getting excited about it. And we're seeing a lot of operations too that are, looking at that and figuring out, well, how can I do things differently? How can I do things smarter? And how can I leverage some of these tools that are coming out that are becoming more and more accessible to a larger spectrum of operators? So really interesting prediction there. I like the prediction. I hope it continues to as well. I agree with it. And really great to talk to you about Cycle Labs here. So as we take our last kind of takeaway here, what would be like your one piece of advice for people who are trying to approach technology within their warehouse operations?
I mean, I would say go at it in an open mind. Understand that you do not know exactly what the future is going to look like. You don't know whether it's going to be the same a year from now or wildly different a year from now. But start to look at embracing change, start to look at what you can do now, have the conversations, be a conduit to look at that and reframe it within your organization, because it's not going to be one person. It's going to be a community of people who are ready to make change happen within your organization. So you're going to have to evangelize, and you have to convince people that there's not an evil that comes along with it, but rather it's something that brings opportunity.
Absolutely. I like that. No evil in technology, right? Unless we get to like Terminator days.
Right, it's possible.
Just be cautious.
At least not in the short run.
Let's not get that far. Definitely. So really appreciate you having us at your booth to be able to talk about Cycle Labs and kind of what you're seeing within the industry and from a systems perspective as well. And obviously kudos on whoever made that great graphic that we shared there as well. Very great stuff. So if people want to read more about this or learn more about Cycle Labs, what's the best way to do that?
Check out, obviously, just go to our website, cyclelabs.io, or follow us on LinkedIn. We try to keep up to date with blog posts and thoughts on what's happening in the industry. And we'll do our best to keep it up to date.
All right, awesome. So thank you once again to Josh for letting us come to his booth and talk to him. And you can check out more information about Cycle Labs at thenewwarehouse.com, as well as in the show notes here, so you can get connected with Josh or the team and make sure you're doing that testing. Very, very important. So thank you once again for your time today.
Thanks, Kevin. Good to see you again, buddy.
You too.
Appreciate it.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesaresexy.com and get your own.